My husband had just left for a business trip. When my 6-year-old whispered, "Mommy, we have to run," I asked, "Why?" She shook and said, "There's no time. We have to go now." I grabbed our bags, reached for the door, and that's when everything changed. The old house always creaked in the mornings. That day, it sounded like the floors themselves were whispering secrets as I walked into the kitchen. I had just poured a glass of orange juice when I heard Emma's voice float in from the living room. "Mommy, the clouds are making funny shapes," she called out, pressing her face against the window. I smiled to myself. Emma was 6, full of wonder and stories. She saw magic in everything. Clouds, cracks in the sidewalk, even the way leaves danced in the wind. Her imagination had no off switch. But that morning, I didn't feel magic. I felt something else. Something I couldn't quite name. Not today, sweetheart, I said gently, placing the juice on the table. "We're in a rush. Daddy's got a big trip, remember?" Right on cue, Richard came downstairs, dressed sharp as always, coffee cup in hand. His tie was perfect, not a single wrinkle on his shirt. He always looked polished, always in control. Tall, charming, the kind of man who turned heads in a room. But lately, he'd been different. Not in ways you'd catch right away. No fights, no shouting. Just distant. Distracted. Like he was always somewhere else, even when he was sitting. "Right across from me. I have a big meeting this weekend," he said as he sipped his coffee. "If it goes well, things could change for us. Big time." He bent down and smoothed Emma's hair. "When Daddy comes back, I'll bring you something amazing. Promise." Emma beamed. "Really?" "Cross my heart," he said, winking. I set the plates down quietly, watching them. That charm of his. It still worked on people. On Emma. On his co-workers. Even on strangers. But I'd been with Richard long enough to know when something wasn't right. And something wasn't. Since my mother passed away 3 months ago, he'd grown more restless, more secretive. He was always stepping out to take calls, always brushing off questions with a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. "You asked about the museum?" I finally said as we sat down. "The exhibition's coming along. It's a tribute to 20th century women artists. It means a lot to me." He nodded, barely listening. "That's good." He used to care about my work, used to ask questions. These days, he acted like it was a side hobby, something I did to pass the time. I tried not to take it personally. "Oh, and by the way," he added casually, "Mom's visiting this weekend, of course. Helen." My favorite topic. I didn't flinch, just kept my tone even. "Emma will be excited." He didn't pick up on the lie. Helen had always made it clear she didn't think I was good enough for her son. Upper class, polished, and controlling in a way that felt polite, but cold. I was a museum curator who wore the wrong shoes and talked too much about artists she didn't care about. She saw me as a distraction to Richard's success. After breakfast, Richard left for work. The house grew quiet. The kind of quiet that used to feel peaceful but now felt heavy. I went upstairs to go through some of my mother's things. She had left behind more than just memories. There was also a sizable inheritance. I hadn't done anything with it yet. I couldn't. Not while I still felt her presence in every drawer, every photograph. As I sat there holding one of her scarves, Emma walked in, her little hands clutching an old photo. "Mommy, look at this." It was a picture of my mother and me, back when I was around Emma's age. I took it gently from her and smiled. "That was a long time ago. Do you miss Grandma?" she asked, her voice soft. I nodded. Every day. She looked down, hesitated. "Grandma told me something before she left." "What did she say?" Emma's eyes flickered. "It's a secret." I smiled, assuming it was another one of her fantasy games. "A secret, huh?" She nodded solemnly, then turned and skipped out of the room. I sat there a while longer, holding the photo, trying to fight off that gnawing feeling inside me. The feeling that something was shifting, something I couldn't see yet, but could feel, like the way the air changes before a storm. That night, I got a call from Richard. "I'm leaving early tomorrow morning," he said. "I've got to prepare." "Okay," I replied, but my fingers clenched around the phone. After we hung up, I walked through the house, checking doors, turning off lights. Emma was already in bed, but the hall outside her room was still dimly lit. I stood there for a while, listening. The house creaked again. My mother's photo was still on the desk in my office. I picked it up and stared at it, the weight of silence filling the room. I'd always used work as a shield, throwing myself into exhibitions, deadlines, travel. It kept me moving, kept me from feeling too much. But lately, that shield was starting to crack. And behind it, all I had was this unsettled feeling I couldn't shake. Something wasn't right. And deep down, I knew it. The next morning started out like any other. Emma was sitting by the window again, drawing on the condensation with her finger. I was sorting through some of my mother's old journals in my office when she walked in, holding something in her hand. "Mommy," she said, "do you remember Grandpa's old basement?" I looked up, confused. "What basement?" Emma tilted her head, like it was obvious. "The one under the house. Grandma told me about it, in a dream." A chill ran down my spine. I never told Emma about the basement. Truthfully, I barely remembered it myself. When we bought the house, the previous owner mentioned an old servant's basement that had been sealed decades ago. We never gave it much thought. But there was something in her voice, this calm certainty that stopped me. "In your dream?" I asked gently. She nodded. "Grandma said it's a safe place. A place to hide if bad people ever come." I forced a smile. "Old houses used to have places like that, sweetie. But they're all sealed now, just stories." She looked at me for a second, as if deciding whether to believe me. Then she walked away quietly. I tried to brush it off, but I couldn't. There was something unsettling about how specific she was. It didn't feel like one of her usual games. It felt pointed. That afternoon, while I was prepping dinner, the phone rang. I wiped my hands on a towel and checked the screen. "Helen." I hesitated, then answered. "Hello? Has Richard left yet?" she asked immediately. Her voice was sharp, almost anxious. "Yes," I said slowly. "He left early this morning." "Why?" There was a pause. Then she said, "Let me know if you hear from him. I need to talk to him about something important." "Is something wrong?" I asked. "No," she said too quickly. "Just checking." Then she added, "And how's Emma?" "She's fine." "Why?" Helen paused again, then said something that stuck with me. "Children notice more than we think, and, just like that, she hung up." As I stood there holding the phone, I noticed a shadow move outside the kitchen window. I stepped closer, trying to get a better look. A man I didn't recognize was walking slowly around the house. He had on a black coat, hands in his pockets, looking around like he was searching for something. He didn't knock. He didn't speak, just circled the property like he had every right to be there. I locked the door. "Emma," I called. "Let's stay inside today. Maybe we can do some drawing together." She came running in, nodding. But her usual cheer was gone. She kept glancing at the windows, like she was waiting for something. That night, when I tried to tuck her into bed, she wouldn't let go of my hand. "I want to sleep with you," she said, her voice small. Not here. Why, sweetheart? Did you have a scary dream again? She shook her head. It's not a dream, Mommy. Daddy and Grandma are planning something bad. My heart stopped. What do you mean? She looked up at me, eyes wide and serious. I found papers in Daddy's study, house plans. He was looking at them and talking on the phone. He said, "Perfect." I heard him. I sat there frozen. My instinct wanted to dismiss it, to tell her she was just imagining things. But something in her tone, how certain she sounded, made it impossible to ignore. After she fell asleep in my bed, I sat in the dark, trying to make sense of everything. The strange man, the sealed basement, Helen's odd phone call, and now this. I couldn't sleep. So I got up and went to Richard's study. The door was slightly open. Usually, he kept it locked. I stepped inside. Everything looked neat, normal, like he hadn't been hiding anything. But when I checked the bottom drawer, the one he always kept locked, it slid open. Inside was a thick envelope. I pulled it out and slowly opened it. Life insurance documents. My name was listed as the insured. The beneficiary? Richard. It was a high-value policy, newly signed, dated 1 week after my mother's death. My hands were shaking. I read through the pages again, just to make sure I wasn't seeing things. But it was all there. Legitimate. Legal. Cold. I stared at the papers for a long time, my chest tightening. I kept thinking about Emma's words, about that basement she wasn't supposed to know about her saying they were planning something. I didn't want to believe it. I couldn't. But deep down, I knew I had to. I woke up to the soft thud of a car door closing. At first, I thought I was imagining it. The sky outside the window was still a pale blue, barely awake. I checked the clock. 5:32 a.m. Then I heard footsteps on the gravel. I sat up, trying to steady my breath. Next to me, Emma was already awake. She didn't say a word. She just stared at me, her little hand gripping my arm like she'd been waiting for me to open my eyes. "Mommy," she whispered, her voice shaking. "We have to leave now." Her eyes were wide, not in a way that suggested a bad dream or some made-up story. No, this was real fear, the kind you can feel without needing a reason. I wanted to ask questions. Where? Why? What exactly was going on? But something in her expression stopped me. I nodded. "Okay," I whispered. "Go get dressed. Take only what you need." I threw on jeans and a sweatshirt, grabbed my phone, my wallet, a few $100s in cash, our passports. I opened the drawer where I kept my mother's old locket and tucked it into my bag. Emma came back in quietly, holding her favorite stuffed animal. She was dressed and ready. Faster than I'd ever seen her move. That's when I heard it. The sound of keys turning in the front door. Emma froze. I grabbed her hand. The door opened with a click. Then, silence. And all at once, I heard a mechanical hum start up through the walls. One by one, the windows around the house began to close. Not just the glass, metal shutters, thick ones. They slammed down like traps, front, back, side windows. The entire house was sealing itself. And then, the smell. Faint at first, but sharp enough to recognize. Gasoline. I looked at Emma, panic starting to rise in my throat. How is this even possible? She didn't answer. She just grabbed my hand and pulled me toward the kitchen. "This way," she said. "We have to go now." We ran past the dining table, past the pantry where I kept extra cans, and paper towels. Emma went straight for the back corner. She moved a stack of supplies with surprising focus and reached behind a dusty set of shelves. There was a small, almost invisible wooden panel. She pulled it. A tiny door creaked open, revealing a dark passage. "Emma, what is this?" I asked, trying to catch my breath. "Grandma told me," she said, looking up at me. "In my dream, it's safe. No one knows about it." Smoke hadn't started yet, but the smell was stronger now, and the air felt heavier, like the walls were holding their breath. I didn't have time to think. I just nodded. "Okay. You go first. Stay close to the wall." The tunnel was narrow, cramped, full of cobwebs and cold air. We had to crouch almost, the whole way. I could feel the dirt brushing against my knees, hear our breathing echoing in the silence. The panic hadn't worn off, but something else took over. Focus. Survival. I just kept thinking, get her out. Get Emma out. Behind us, something thudded. A door? A footstep? I didn't look back. Emma led the way like she'd been there before, even though I knew that wasn't possible. Still, she didn't hesitate. Not once. As we crawled, my heart pounded so hard I thought it might echo down the tunnel, but I followed her, trusting her more than I trusted anything in that moment. Because somehow she knew exactly where we needed to go. The tunnel was cold and tight, the air thick with dust. I could barely see Emma in front of me, just the shape of her small body moving forward, steady and sure. Cobwebs brushed my face, the walls closing in around us, but I kept crawling, one hand in front of the other. My knees scraped against the ground. My palms burned. Still, I followed her. Then we heard it. A deep, violent boom shook the earth behind us. The tunnel rattled like it might collapse. Dirt rained from above. I gasped, freezing for a moment, my heart slamming in my chest. The house had exploded. I turned my head, but the darkness swallowed everything behind us. The only sound was our breathing and the fire. I could hear it now. That low, monstrous crackling. It was spreading fast, but Emma kept going. She didn't flinch. She looked back just once, calm and clear. "It's okay, Mommy. We're almost there." I don't know how she stayed so steady. I was shaking so badly I could barely move. My brain kept trying to make sense of it. How we got here. How Richard could have done this. How it all fell apart so fast. Then I saw it. A sliver of light ahead. Emma pushed open a low wooden door, and we stumbled out into the basement of the old shed. Fresh, cool air rushed in like a blessing. I could breathe again. We ran up the stairs, kicked open the shed door, and stepped outside. The sky was bright, but smoke was already filling it. Thick, black plumes rising above the treetops. The crackle of flames echoed in the distance. Then came the sirens, one, then two, growing louder as they approached the neighborhood. I dropped to my knees, coughing hard, trying to catch my breath. Emma stood beside me, her face streaked with soot, clutching my hand like a lifeline. She looked at me and said, "We should go to Barbara's house." Barbara, our neighbor, our friend. I nodded, still, breathless. Yes, let's go." We ran across the yard, hearts pounding, lungs burning. By the time we reached her porch, I could barely stand. I rang the doorbell once, then again. Barbara opened the door in her bathrobe, eyes wide with confusion. "Mary?" I fell into her arms. "Call the police," I whispered. "Richard tried to kill us. He set the house on fire." She didn't question a thing. She pulled us inside, sat us down, handed me water with trembling hands, then grabbed the phone and started dialing. I wrapped my arms around Emma and held her tight. I couldn't stop shaking. Everything hit me all at once. The fire, the basement, the metal shutters, the smell of gasoline, The explosion. I should have seen it sooner. I should have trusted my instincts. But I didn't. And if it weren't for my daughter, I wouldn't be alive to say that. She rested her head on my shoulder. You saved my life, I whispered. Emma looked up at me, calm as ever. Grandma told me to. The police arrived minutes later, then the fire trucks. Through the window, I watched as smoke poured from what used to be our home. 2 officers came inside to take our statement. I told them everything, from the secret phone calls to the sealed basement, from the life insurance policy to the explosion. They looked skeptical, until I pulled out my phone and showed them the photos I took of the documents. Richard's name, the contract date, the beneficiary line. One of the detectives looked at the photos, his brows knitting together. This is serious, he said. Then he looked at Emma and gently asked, Sweetheart, did you hear your daddy say anything? Emma nodded. Her voice was soft but clear. He said, If Mommy is gone, everything becomes his. The room went silent. That's when I saw something shift in the detective's face. For the first time since this nightmare started, someone believed us. The hours that followed felt like a blur. Officers came and went. Neighbors stood outside, watching the smoke, and firefighters moved through the charred skeleton of what used to be our home. I sat on Barbara's couch, clutching Emma close, waiting for someone to tell me this nightmare was over. But it wasn't. An arson investigator pulled me aside and said, There's no doubt. This was deliberate. Traces of gasoline were found all around the foundation. And the security system? It was custom modified, remote controlled, wired to lock every exit from the outside. He didn't need to say anything else. I already knew. The police issued a statewide alert for Richard, and within hours, they found him at a gas station off the interstate, sitting in his car with a duffel bag full of cash, fake IDs, and burner phones. When they questioned him, he said he was on his way to a business meeting. No one bought it. At first, he denied everything. Said I was paranoid. Said I must have set the fire myself. Then, when the evidence started piling up, he changed his story. He blamed Helen. He claimed the plan wasn't his, that his mother had manipulated everything, that she had pressured him, controlled him, convinced him there was no other way. But it didn't take long before Helen was arrested too. And that's when the truth came spilling out. They both confessed, but neither took responsibility. They blamed each other. Richard said Helen orchestrated it all. Helen said Richard had lied to her, used her love as leverage. It was sickening to hear. And what shocked me most wasn't just what they did. It was how far back it went. Richard had been living a double life for years. His job at the investment firm? A front. He hadn't been bringing in real income in almost 2 years. He was drowning in debt, gambling, lying, hiding. And worse, he had someone else. A woman in another state. A whole other life waiting for him. He planned to use my mother's inheritance to disappear. Start over. Erase everything. I sat through every interview, every question from detectives, holding Emma's hand. She never wavered. Not once. When the trial began 3 months later, they asked me if I wanted Emma involved. I hesitated, but she insisted. She walked into that courtroom with her head high, holding my hand. When they asked her what she heard, she told them. Calmly, clearly. She told the jury how she'd heard her daddy on the phone, how he said, "If Mary is gone, everything becomes mine." How he looked at old blueprints of the house and said, "Perfect." She didn't cry. She didn't hide. She stood there, 6 years old, and told the truth. Even the judge had to pause. And then, days before the final hearing, I found something tucked away in one of my mother's old notebooks. An envelope. Inside was a handwritten letter, The ink was faint, but her voice was so clear. She wrote, "Richard approached me about an investment, said it would change everything. I looked into his company and found it was all smoke and mirrors. I told him no." The date on the letter was 2 weeks before she died. I stared at those words for a long time, my hands trembling. My mother knew. She tried to protect me in the only way she could. I handed the letter over to the prosecutors. It didn't change what had already happened, but it made one thing painfully clear. This plan didn't start with a single fire. It started long before that, with lies, with greed, with a man who saw his own family as disposable. But the truth had a way of cutting through all of it. And now, the truth was finally out. The trial ended with a quiet sort of finality. Richard was sentenced to 15 years. Helen got 8. There was no dramatic outburst, no final twist. Just the cold truth laid bare for everyone to see. Helen sat there, silent for most of it, until the end. When asked why she went along with it, she said something that stayed with me. "It was for my son," she whispered. Like that explained everything. Like that somehow made it less monstrous. It didn't. The courtroom emptied out, but the weight of it lingered. I remember walking out with Emma's small hand wrapped in mine, her fingers still sticky from the lollipop the bailiff had given her. She looked up at me and smiled like it was just another day. And in a strange way, it was. The beginning of a new one. We moved to a smaller house a few weeks later. Nothing fancy. Just a little 2-bedroom place in a quiet town, not far from where we used to live. There's a big maple tree in the front yard and a patch of wildflowers in the back. The first night we spent there, Emma fell asleep in my arms, and for the first time in months, I didn't lie awake waiting for the next nightmare to come. She's been drawing again. That's how I know she's healing. One day, she brought me a picture she made at school. 3 women standing under a tree, holding hands. Me, her, and my mother. She didn't say much when she handed it to me. Just smiled and said, "Grandma would like this, right?" I nodded and tried not to cry. I used part of the inheritance to start something new. A foundation for young female artists, just like the ones my mother always believed in. I named it Reverse Dream. Emma asked why I chose that name, and I told her it means finding hope in the places where you thought there was none. Turning something painful into something beautiful. The days feel softer now. Lighter. Michael still comes by, at first, just as Emma's therapist, then as a friend. Now, well, I don't really know what to call him yet, but he's there. He helps fix things around the house. He listens when I talk too much, and he's the only one who can make Emma laugh until she snorts. One evening, as we were sitting by the fireplace, Emma looked up from her coloring book and asked, "Mommy, what's a real family?" I thought about it for a moment, then said, "It's not about blood, baby. It's about love, about protecting each other, taking care of each other, even when things get hard." She nodded like she understood. That's why we became a real family. I looked at her, then at Michael across the room. He smiled quietly. And in that moment, I believed it. If you believe in the power of a child's love, if you've ever had to rebuild your life after betrayal, leave a comment. Share your story. We'd love to hear it.